Sums up the relationship between the sponsor and the catechumen or candidate. This workshop is designed for 2.5 hours, and I only have an hour, so we're going to move fast. But I'm going to try to give you everything I've got in here. What we don't cover verbally, you'll have in your packet and in this outline, so you can do some study on your own when you get home. I've divided this into 2 parts. Part 1, which is on your buff-colored agenda, is the role of the sponsor. Part 2, which is on the 2nd page, is a little bit about sponsor formation, because that's equally as important as having someone be a sponsor. You've got to form sponsors as well. So, it's always good whenever you're embarking on anything connected to RCIA to start where?
Right.
With the right. Exactly. This is your Bible. If you're, how many of you are RCIA directors? Oh, only a couple. And the rest of you are team members. Catechists? Yes. Anybody a sponsor coordinator? Ah, great. 3 of you. All right, well then you've got some input for us today. That's wonderful. The right has a good bit to say about sponsors. You have a handout that looks like this, figure 4. This comes from a book called New Wineskins. It's an oldie but goodie, done by James Dunning, whom I already mentioned. I don't even know if it's still in print, but I'm sure you can find it. If you are new to RCIA and if you're looking for something to create a passion in you, this does it. This is all about the vision, the heart, the purpose, what's central to RCIA. So if you can find a copy of this, it's well worth finding. It's called New Wineskins by James Dunning. It was published by Sadlier, so you might want to try to find that one. But this figure came from that book, as you can see down at the bottom, and it's a great great place to start because it looks at several things. It looks at who are the ministers, what is the message or the word that's communicated, what about community building, what about celebration, and what about service. Those are the four marks of the early church. In Greek, they were kerygma, the message, okay? The proclamation of the gospel, that's word. Then community building would be koinonia. Celebration would be liturgy or liturgia in Greek, and I've never studied Greek, so I may be murdering the pronunciation. And then the service and the healing part, which is diakonia. That's where we get the word deacon from, those who serve. Now, when you look at this chart, there are certain people that are mandated. Catechist, if you go across, okay? The sponsor, mandated by the right, okay? The local community, they happen to list the parish council. I don't know that that's what I would put there, but whatever. It's the whole community to me, not just a part of it. Ordained ministers for the rites, and then all of the people in the parish that are involved in some kind of ministry that give witness to the catechumens and candidates about what it means to live your life as a Catholic Christian. The people who do St. Vincent de Paul work, the people that do Kairos ministry, the people who pray the rosary, all of those different groups in the parish give witness to this is what your life could look like as you finish this process known as RCIA. So, what does the right have to say about sponsor since it's mandated? You have another handout in your packet that looks like this. Christian Initiation, General Introduction. Okay? Turn to the second page of that. This is straight out of the right, but I was sure you wouldn't be lugging a right book around with you, so I copied pages out of it, but this is where it comes from. So you want to go to page 2, the back of the first page. Talks about the offices and ministries of baptism. And you notice I've highlighted some things in red. In the actual celebration, I'm in that right-hand column, do you see where I am? Mm-hmm. In the actual celebration, the people of God, represented not only by the parents, godparents, and relatives, but also as far as possible by friends, neighbors, and some members of the local community, should take an active part. When you look back on this diagram, who is the initiating community? Where, you see where it says under Society of Ministers, the total community? Mm-hmm. All Christians, all the community, all the community, all the liturgical assembly, all the community, okay? That's who initiates. It's not me, it's not the RCIA team, it's not just the sponsor, it's the whole living community of faith that initiates and welcomes. All right, so it says, thus they will show their common faith and the shared joy with which the newly baptized are received into the community of the church. It's a very ancient custom of the church that adults are not admitted to baptism without godparents, members of the Christian community who will assist the candidates at least in the final preparation for baptism, and after baptism will help them persevere in the faith and in their lives as Christians. So the journey of the sponsor is not done at the Easter Vigil, nor is it done at Pentecost. Okay? Skip down to number 9. At least in the later rites of the catechumenate and in the actual celebration of baptism, the part of godparents is to testify to the faith of adult candidates, or together with the parents, in case of children, to profess the church's faith in which the children are baptized. So, right off the bat, In the general, I mean, that's just the general introduction of the RCIA. They're mentioning sponsors and their importance. But now pull out the next handout, which is green, which also comes directly out of the right. Ministries and offices. Now, I find this really interesting. In paragraph number 9, it says, the initiation of adults, I'm reading the underlined part. Is yours underlined? No? Okay. Third line down. The initiation of adults is the responsibility of all the baptized. Circle all the baptized, right? Therefore, the community must always be fully prepared in the pursuit of its apostolic vocation to give help to those who are searching for Christ. Skip down to the next sentence where it says, hence, the entire community must help the candidates and the catechumens throughout the process of initiation. And then it starts to mention, like under number 1, it talks about during the pre-catechumenate, and then under 10, or 2, it talks about the catechumenate, and 3, the day of the rite of election and Lent. And it talks about how the whole community is a part of those things. But skip down to number 10. A sponsor accompanies any candidate seeking admission as a catechumen. Now, that can be confusing because you say, oh, well, no, catechumens have godparents. But the church sometimes uses those terms interchangeably. So here what they're saying is the sponsor can accompany a catechumen, and at the time of baptism, that person may be the catechumen's godparent, but may not. It may be that a person, the rite says a catechumen has a right to choose his or her own godparent. But it's the parish's responsibility to provide an accompanying sponsor through the journey. Okay? Now, what I do sometimes is, for example, if somebody says, my uncle in Michigan, I really want him to be my godparent. And so I will say, well, your uncle in Michigan can't be here every week for all of the sessions. So if you'll allow us to provide you with a parish sponsor, we'll do that. And then when you're baptized, both the person who's accompanied you all of this time and your uncle from Michigan, can be there as your godparents. Because what they don't realize is the bond that's going to develop between them and the parish sponsor. And I can tell you, at the time of baptism, they're not going to say, I don't want you anymore, I just want my uncle. I mean, they're going to want both of them there. So, but that's why they kind of distinguish between a sponsor and a godparent. So anyway, sponsors in that next sentence are persons who have known and assisted the candidates and stand as witnesses to the candidate's moral character, faith, and intention. I think it's important that part of the sentence that says they've known them. I get very concerned, maybe is the gentler way to say it, in situations in some parishes where the sponsor doesn't come to sessions, shows up at the Easter Vigil. I mean, what is that? That's not the vision of the rite. The vision of the rite is that this person gets to know the catechumen or candidate really well. And, not on the level of news, weather, and sports, but on a faith-sharing level. And in many ways, the friendship and the bond that deepens is deeper than sometimes their own relatives, because they may have never shared faith with a family member. So it's a very different relationship. So sponsors are persons who have known and assisted these candidates, heard their story, like that song said. If you go down to number 11, their godparents, well, you can have a godmother or a godfather, but you know, most of the time with adults you just have one, but you can have two. Accompany the candidates on the day, and seeing they're calling them candidates again, and they're really catechumens, right? On the day of election, and it tells what they do. Now, what's interesting to me is turn to the next page. Number 12, then it talks about the bishop's role. Then number 13 talks about the priest's role. Then down to number 15, 14 also talks about the priest. 15 talks about deacons, and 16 talks about candidates. Now, if you know anything at all about the church, pardon?
Catechist.
Catechist. If you know anything at all about rights, the positioning of things is important. You know, it tells you, we're going to talk about this first because this is the most important thing. So where do they put sponsors? Right at the very beginning, after the entire community, right? That's significant. It's saying that the sponsor's role is incredibly important. Okay? That's why in the second part of this, we're going to be talking about their formation. All right? So, any questions at this point? Or comments? Yes, ma'am?
I have one. So, say for instance, you get a already baptized that comes in, and they already have a godparent. Okay. So
Okay, from their baptism.
correct.
Now, are you talking about a Catholic or someone who's not Catholic?
Someone who's not Catholic. Okay, but they were baptized.
Well, then they cannot be their confirmation sponsor.
Okay.
Well, I will never again fuss at people for not turning off their cell phones.
So are you saying if that person, but if they're sponsor, I mean if they're, how can I say that? Yeah, if they're the person that baptized them, I'm sorry, the person that was baptized, their godparent, if they are now Catholic though,
Oh,
but they were not baptized as Catholic,
that's fine, but if they're Catholic now,
but the godparent is Catholic now,
sure,
can that person be
Sure.
that sponsor?
yeah.
Okay, now, my next question, and this is just advocate, but can a sponsor be, say for instance, like at our church, we struggle with finding sponsors, okay? So we end up, part of the RCIA team, we end up being sponsors. So can we, is it okay to be more than every year I'm somebody's sponsor? Or every year I get one or two people that I'm having a sponsor? Or, and also the second half of that question is, can a sponsor be a godparent?
Yes, a sponsor can be a godparent.
Yeah, okay, so, okay.
Yeah. Now, the first part of your question, that's not ideal. Let me just tell you a little bit about our journey, because I told you we learned by doing. When we started this 32 years ago, if somebody said, oh, I want my sister to be my sponsor, I want my husband to be my sponsor, I want, you know, we didn't have a sponsor coordinator, we didn't have a developed sponsor program, so we allowed that. It's lousy. It just is. You know, people are going to have those relatives for the rest of their lives. Here's an opportunity for them to have someone who doesn't have to be with them. You know, someone who has volunteered to spend all this time with them and journey with them in faith. So once you say, this year we're going to focus on sponsors. I mean, I always tell our CIA team members, this thing is so big and it's so all-encompassing and you got so much stuff to do. You got rights, you got catechesis, you got, you know, on and on and on and on and on. Try to do one thing each year that you're looking at and saying, you know, we really ought to improve here, whatever that here might be. But if it's sponsors, try to bite that bullet and say, we're going to find parish sponsors this year.
Okay. And it's okay to re-sponsor? So in other
Oh,
words-
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you can sponsor again. But we've never had a team member sponsor. And the reason for that is we feel that the team members have other responsibilities, and their responsibility is to the entire group, not to one. You know, we don't want it to look like, oh, you know, you're my favorite, so I'll be your sponsor. You know, we want to be there for everyone rather than for one. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, here's another book that I would really suggest. If these workshops weren't for free, I would have given you all one if there was a charge, but I couldn't afford to do that for you from our parish. But this is a book called Guide for Sponsors. It comes from Liturgy Training Publications, which I'm sure you get a lot of stuff from. They have wonderful materials, okay? It's called A Guide for Sponsors.
Who's the author?
The author is Father Ron Lewinski, Lewinski. And this has been around for a long time. It's in its probably, I don't know, second or third edition of it. Fourth edition of this. It's excellent. I provide these for every sponsor. But a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is in this book. It's valuable for you as team members as well. But I think it's worth they charge, the list price on here is $6, but there are several places, like have you ever heard of Morningstar Resources?
Yes.
Morningstar Resources sells liturgy training publication materials at a discount. It's called Morningstar Resources, and the man's name is Gary. That's all. I don't even know his last name, but Gary and I are best buds. So you can get them for less than $6 a piece.
Who's the publisher?
Liturgy Training Publications, LTP. Okay, so.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You get those back afterwards, or you let them have?
Oh no, I let them have them.
Okay.
Yep. So, what does it mean to be a sponsor? The sponsor represents the Catholic community. In the early church, it's hard for us to imagine. I told you I'm from St. Thomas Aquinas. We have at least 4,000 families. I mean, there are towns in America that are smaller than that, right? So it's huge, absolutely huge. In the early church, remember, the communities met in homes. And not, mega mansions either, small by our size, and that's where the community gathered. So when someone approached the Christian community and wanted to become a member, the whole household would know them, right? So in our situation, you saw on that chart who initiates. All the community, all the community, all the community. Well, the reality is in a parish of 12,000 people, how's that going to happen? So, the parish sponsor really and truly is representative of that community. So that ups the ante a good bit for them. They are, like we sang in our song, I'm following my outline here. If you're following that, I'm at Roman numeral 3. They are companions and fellow travelers on the journey of faith. They are friends. They are mentors. They're guides. They give witness and testimony to the candidate and to the community. There's an article, I probably should have copied this one for you. It's an old one, but it talks about that being a witness and a guide. And this is what it says about being a witness in particular. The sponsor stands between the community of the faithful and the candidate. I always think of them as like a broker or a midwife or, an intermediary, one that helps make the connection between the candidate and the larger community. As a believing member of the community and a close friend of the candidate, the sponsor is in a position to give accurate information to the community about this person, to witness on behalf of the community to the candidate and on behalf of the candidate to the community. It works both ways, okay? So the sponsor is kind of that intermediary, that broker. Witness on behalf of the community is charismatic witness. I used that word earlier. That means proclaiming the good news of Jesus, okay? So on behalf of the community, the sponsor gives witness to that in their own life. In other words, they need to believe in Jesus themselves. They need to be faithful people. They need to be people who pray. They don't need to be well educated, but they need to be people of faith. Witness on behalf of the candidate is the giving of public testimony, which they do at rites, okay? Especially the rite of sending in your parish, right before the rite of election. I always tell my sponsors that this is when you're earning your money, which is of course zero. You have to stand in front of the whole community and you have to speak on behalf of your person, verbally. I mean, I hope you are doing that in your parish. If you just follow the rite where it says, have they done this? They have. Have they done this? They have they done this? They have. That doesn't let the community know anything about their faith journey. But when a sponsor comes before the community and says, I've been walking with Mary now for 5 or 6 or 7 months or 2 years or however long it's been. And she came to us from Vietnam, let's say, fled oppression, this is a true story. She was interred in a camp for many, many years. And she came to believe that God was with her. And so when she came here, she came with faith. But she wanted to know how we expressed our faith as Catholic Christians. And so I have walked with her, I've seen her grow and develop, whatever. Well, I'm telling you that the whole community at Mass is on the edge of their seats going, oh my goodness. I was baptized as a baby. Where am I in my faith journey? Look what this woman is doing. Look what she's been through. Look what faith can mean. Maybe I need to investigate Catholicism myself. They are a powerful witness to the community. Both the catechumens and candidates and the sponsors when they give testimony. So that giving witness part is essential.
Terry?
Yes.
May I just ask this quickly, because I loved what I just heard, that you just shared. I'm the adult faith coordinator at St. Thomas the Apostle, and with the RCIA, right, here's my question. That was really nice. Usually we have large classes, so could you just tell me how you work that? Because the right, I'll get up as the coordinator, and then I go back and Father asks me, and then I tell him. So is there a right that allows that, or do you build it in? Okay, I'll talk to you.
It's in there. What we do, because we have fairly large numbers too, It's the godparents who give witness for the catechumens. We don't do it for the candidates for a time factor.
Just for the catechism?
You know, but we
Okay.
do it for the catechumens.
Okay, all right. Then
Because as you know, I hope you know, the rite of Christian initiation of adults is designed and saying, where's God in this? You know, where did I find God today? Now, if they don't know how to do that when they start, they'll learn, because that's what the catechists are going to be, you know, hopefully creating in those classrooms, is that atmosphere where here we talk about our faith, our journey of faith, okay? So that's what that means about listening to your own life. Some of you may know the Ignatian Examen. That's a perfect example of listening to your own life. At the end of your day, go, wow, who did I see today? What were the major things that happened? What made me anxious? What made me defensive? What made me, you know, you just look at your whole day and then pray about that, you know? Okay, so a sponsor actively listens to the catechumen or the candidate. Doesn't necessarily have to be the big talker, right? But a good listener. And one who listens for what's being said beyond the story. For example, we do I'm going to tell you about our sponsored training in a minute, but we watch a video, and there's a sponsor and a candidate, and it shows how their relationship develops from when they first meet each other during inquiry, when they during the catechumenate, right before the rite of election, when the candidate's getting cold feet and thinking, oh God, I don't think I can do this, and you know, it shows the development of the relationship, okay? So in one of the settings, the sponsor and the candidate are sitting, well, she's a catechumen, they're sitting in the sponsor's kitchen, which is another point that is important. Some of this relationship has to be built outside the classroom, okay? Dinner, breakfast, coffee at Starbucks, whatever. A parking lot. There's a great ministry in the parking lot after the sessions are over that we have no control over, right? You see them out there, you know, standing beside their cars, just talking and talking, and you know, that relationship with each other is building out there. It's good stuff. In the parking lot when it's dark and the church lights are about to be cut off, you know, they're out there talking.
Security guards.
But anyway, in one of these conversations that happens in the kitchen between the sponsor and the catechumen, she talks about, you know, I wish my husband were doing this. You know, he's a Catholic, but he's not very active in church, and I think he's mad with God. And the sponsor said, really? Yeah? Why do you think he's mad with God? Well, his mother died. And so she tells the story about her husband and how that really affected him and how he's never quite put all that together, and he's mad at God because his mother died a very painful death. So the sponsor is saying, and so the catechumen says to the sponsor, he needs to be around people like you and your husband, you know? And the sponsor very wisely says, well, you know, I think you could talk to him about this. You know, she's not, you know, it's not her job. And she says, maybe you could talk about how you felt when you had your miscarriage, you know? And talk about how you were afraid and angry with God, and, you know, and how you moved through that. You know, so the sponsor is kind of almost like a life coach. You know, it's not a big theological thing. It's just, you know, this is how life happens. And if your husband's feeling alienated from God, you're the closest one to him. Share your struggles with him and see what happens. You know, it's that kind of stuff. So, actively listens to the feelings that are behind the words. You know, when you hear anger, when you hear frustration, that's what you want to zero in on. Not the facts of you know, my husband doesn't go to church. You know, it's like, what's underneath that? How do you feel about that? What's caused that in him, okay? A sponsor is willing to share his or her own faith. Talk about his or her own relationship with God. Including the struggle. I mean, I would hate to have a holier than thou sponsor. You know, I mean, they're just obnoxious. You know, they really are. I mean, you want somebody who's real, you know, who's been through breast cancer, who's been through a divorce, who's been, you know, these are people that have lived life and have struggled. They make the good sponsors. The wounded healers, you know, like Henry Nouwen talks about. A sponsor's respectful, that's pretty obvious. What that means, though, is respectful of whatever they hear. You know, a person's journey is a person's journey, and it's not the sponsor's job to say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You know, it's not, no judgment, okay? A sponsor serves as a bridge between the community and the RCIA community. A sponsor respects the candidate's freedom. You know, if you're not ready to do this, that's okay. I'll be with you as long as it takes. You know, as I'm sure you know, one of the biggest difficulties in our CIA ministry is the whole annulment issue. So when we're doing our sponsor training, you know, we'll say to these sponsors, it's entirely possible that we might match you with someone who has to apply for an annulment. Would you be willing to give maybe 2 years to this or 3 years to this? Because if you're not, tell us now, and we'll find somebody else. Because you don't want them to have to, you know, have 3 or 4 sponsors while they're waiting for an annulment to come through. So it's only fair to the sponsor to say, you know, if you can only, you know, do this for X amount of time, tell us now. Just be honest with us, and then we'll try to find somebody who can give the time that it takes sometimes for folks to complete their journey. A sponsor doesn't have all the answers. Do any of us? And a sponsor meets them where they are. Where they are. So, what should a sponsor be expected to do? I was a teacher. I trained to be a high school teacher when I was in my other life, when I was young, and I always set kind of a high bar, you know. And what I've learned is, if you set a high bar, people will meet it. You know, if you don't expect much, you don't get much. But if you tell them up front, this is a big commitment. So if it's too big for you to take on, tell us now, because we're going to be asking a lot of you as a sponsor, and we do at St. Thomas. We expect our sponsors to attend all of the sessions. I mean, obviously, if they're sick or traveling or whatever, you know, there are times when people can't be there. But the expectation is you're there, and if you're not going to be there, let us know. The other expectation we tell the humans and candidates, if you can't be here for a particular session, don't call your sponsor and say, I'm not going to be there on Thursday night, so you don't need to come.
Yes.
You know, we tell the sponsors, oh, no. All the more reason that you need to be there, because your job is going to be to communicate what happened, right? So set the expectations high. To be present, obviously, at all the major rites, to attend sponsor training. We train all of our sponsors. Sponsor meetings, which we have.
Right there.
Yep.
Right there. How often are your sponsor meetings, and how often are your trainings or process?
I have one training that's 3 hours long. I mean, it's a Saturday morning. Actually, I offer it twice. I offer it on a Saturday morning, which is usually the most attended one. And then we do kind of like a makeup for those that couldn't make it on a weeknight.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a good 3-hour session, and I'm giving you a lot of the materials that we use for that.
And then your sponsor meeting?
And our sponsor meetings don't have that many, but we have one in January. You know, they've been with them by then for at least a couple of months.
Correct.
So it's how's it going? You know?
Okay.
And I've got that with me, it's in the packet, we'll get there in a second. And then we have another one, well, we have lots of rehearsals with sponsors. Because the rehearsals are the ones you want to, the sponsors are the ones you want to rehearse before the rites. So that the catechumens and candidates don't have to be rehearsed much at all.
Right.
You know, it's the sponsor that carries the weight of knowing where to be and where to stand and what to do. And so there are those things. I wouldn't call those meetings, though. I call those rehearsals. And then we have another meeting with them during Mystagogia. So January and then one, you know, in the middle of Mystagogia. But we tell them at their sponsor training, if you start encountering some kind of problem in the relationship with your catechumen or candidate, don't let it grow to you know, a proportion that makes it really difficult to address. Talk to talk to any one of us anytime you need us, privately.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's usually like about an hour, the meeting that you have. The one
Yes, in
day
fact, you know what
where
we do? We have our sessions, we have dismissals on Sunday, but our sessions are on a Thursday evening at 7:30. So when we have sponsor meetings, we do them the same night at 6 o'clock, and we say, bring your own dinner, and we'll, you know, so they don't have another night to come. It seems to work, you know?
Okay.
So they're going to come that night anyway, they just are coming a little bit early, and they bring their dinner, and we sit and have our meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Meet outside the sessions. We talked about that a few minutes ago. You know, Starbucks, dinner, breakfast. I invite them over for Thanksgiving dinner, invite them for, you know, whatever works, but something. You know, a lot of the guys will meet and have a beer, you know, or go to a game, or, you know, anything that brings them together on what can be a purely social level. Don't diminish the value of social encounter. You know, it doesn't all have to be holy, you know. Introduce them to the parish and to the activities in the parish. Serve as that broker. For example, if the sponsor happens to be a Eucharistic minister and brings communion to the sick, say to your catechumen or candidate, I'm going to go to the nursing home this Sunday. Would you like to come with me? Or I'm involved in St. Vincent de Paul. We're having a meeting. Would you like to come? Or we're fixing Thanksgiving baskets. Would you like to help with that? Anything. You just involve them in some way in some of the activities of the parish. Keep the team informed about the concerns that you have. That's what I just mentioned a minute ago. And keep the team informed about your own concerns as a sponsor. I mean, we had, oh my goodness, we had a woman last year who was a catechumen. She was from Thailand, I believe. Very quiet, shy. What surfaced after we got to know her better was that she suffered from clinical depression. She was out of work, extremely depressed. And her whole body looked depressed, you know? Well, her sponsor, God love her, was so worried about this woman, you know? And went, I mean, to heroic lengths to do what she could to help her. But she needed a lot of coaching from the team. She did. Because she had a tough situation to deal with. And that happens sometimes. So, you know, if you have members on the team that can help with that, good. If not, tell the sponsor, hey, go talk to Father so-and-so, or go talk to the social worker that maybe comes to your parish, or, I mean, they might need help too, is what I'm saying. So, all right, I'm on the next page. Remember, sponsors need to remember that they are there for the sake of the catechumen or candidate. Now, I'm sure you know that most sponsors will tell you at the end, I think I got more out of this than my catechumen or candidate, Because for many of them, it's the first time they've experienced their faith as an adult and really looked at it, okay? But you don't want somebody that says, well, I'd like to be a sponsor because I'd like to learn more about my faith. You know what I mean? You don't want that to be their presenting motivation. Let it be a byproduct and rejoice in it, but they need to be there for the sake of the candidate. And to continue that relationship for at least a year after initiation. And like I said before, expect a lot, you get a lot. So what can a sponsor expect? I think all of these things: a renewal or deepening of their faith relationship with God, a stronger sense of community and belonging to the parish. I've had sponsors say to me, every Catholic should be a sponsor, because it's a renewal for them in their faith. A better sense of identity in terms of themselves and of the church. They know now what it means to be a baptized Christian. Some of them maybe for the first time. And they've also hopefully gained a new friend. What you hope for is that that relationship will last forever. Doesn't always, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. In your packet, you have a funny little drawing. It looks like this. We did a sponsor workshop many years ago, and we had plenty of time. And one of the activities we had everybody do was draw a picture of the perfect sponsor. And this is what they came up with. The portrait of a good sponsor has a hole in the head because it's open-minded, right? Just look at it. It's funny.
Wow. But
it's good. It's kind of spot on. They know they have a splinter in their own eye. They don't judge other people. I love the slinky. They're flexible. All right. Now, how much time do we have? You're kidding me. Okay, 5 minutes. All right, now go to the left-hand side of your packet.
okay. Can she ask you a quick question?
Yep.
Let's clarify, when a catechumen candidate comes to a class and brings a spouse and says, I want that spouse to be my sponsor, or our parent, such a sponsor, how can we politely tell them that I want to say
That spouse can't be that sponsor.
right, and the reason why.
Okay, just the reason she gave. The fact that, no, really, the fact that you will be with that person all the time. The sponsor is someone.
But if that person's persistent about it.
Well, okay,
That's
here's what I said. Because I was talking to a woman on Friday who, was calling to register for RCIA, and she said, now, would my husband be my sponsor? And I said, no. I said, and here's why. I said, for one thing, he's going to be with you hopefully forever. For another thing, he may need a refresher in what it means to be a Catholic. People will tell you, I go home and I tell my husband what we did in class, and they go, really? So, they may not be the best sponsor, but I always say, you're more than welcome to have your husband come to these sessions with you, He can be
They're
there,
part of it.
yes, but we'd like to provide a parish sponsor for you, someone who, you know, is who wants to companion you, and who's another woman. You know, there are things that women will share with other women that they might not even share with their husbands. You know? So,
Right, in almost every case, it's a same-sex.
yes,
In almost every case.
yes.
I mean, I sponsored in someone, but he was a young man. And it's just a real great connection, but it was more on the request of their parent, of his parents. So, but that worked out well with me and him,
Yeah.
so, yeah. Because he was the same age as, you know, my son, and, you know, that bond. So it's more or less like, not only am I a sponsorship, but I'm like an aunt to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah.
I mean, I think as long as you let the person know that their spouse is welcome to be there, that you're not shutting them out. But I'll tell you what we do the first night. We, you know, our very first night of inquiry, we have folks come, and they usually come with somebody, you know, that, because it's scary to walk up those steps all by yourself in another church that's not yours, you know. So they often come with a fiance or with their husbands or whatever. After the introductory prayer and all that kind of stuff, then we divide the group up into the inquirers that go off with the team, and then any Catholic companion that came with them. If you wouldn't mind, just stay in this room for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, okay? And one of the team members talks to them about, we'd love to have you come to these classes, but these classes are for the inquirer. They're not for you, okay? And so we would respectfully ask you not to dump your Catholic baggage here, you know? Because it can be a problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be an obstacle, you know, because they've got a different set of questions than Catholics do. That's another one of those hard-learned lessons. Because we used to open the inquiry. Did anybody want to know anything about, you know, more about the church?
We do.
Holy gosh. You just can't deal with all that. It's two different agendas. So, you know, very nicely, that we have, not me, but we have a tactful person on our team who talks to those Catholic friends or spouses and kind of says, you know, we'd love to have you be here, but give them the space and the freedom that they need to ask their questions. That's why we're here. It's just sort of.
What if they're what if they just bring somebody and they're both of them are non-Catholic? And they bring somebody, would you lump them over there, or would you let them be in
Oh,
the
sure,
water?
they could be there. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to have to go like lightning, right? All right, on the left-hand side, I told you this was a 2-hour workshop. On the left-hand side, what you have are the things that we do for sponsor formation. Okay? You want to try as best you can to establish a pool so you're not scrambling every year, you know? Have some people in the wings. Be talking to them in April, you know, right after Easter. You know, would you consider being a sponsor next year? And just start a list of names. We have a sponsor coordinator on our team, thank God, because if I had to do that with everything else, yeah, because it's a job. It's a job. And this woman is like a dog with a bone. Her name is Cecilia, and she will make 300 cold calls. I'm not kidding you. If she were in sales, she'd do really well. I mean, she'll just cold call people. She'll look through the parish directory and look for people, you know, where there are pictures of families with 3 or 4 kids. And if there's a candidate that looks like that, she'll go, you know what, I'm going to give them a call. See if maybe they like. She's amazing. So, this first paper clipped thing together is a large chunk of our sponsor formation, okay? So you're just going to have to go through that on your own. Then this is the January sponsor meeting, okay? This is one, oh, I I forgot another one. This is during Lent.
And then the content.
And this one is during Mystagogia. So I think you can probably figure out from what's in these, what we're trying to do at each one of those meetings. If you can't figure them out, or if it prompts a whole bunch of questions, you've got my card. I'd be more than happy to help you, if you have questions about any of those meetings. But do you want to pass out those evaluation forms, or do they already have them? Okay. Oh, then do we have a minute for questions?
Yeah. It's only lunchtime, and the line is going to be long anyway.
And lunch is what, an hour and a half? Maybe that's one hour at a time. So any questions before you leave? I mean, if you want to run to lunch, and if you have just a personal question, I'll be here. How's that?
Yeah, as far as, I just wanted to say this, I've known Terry, Michael Akuto introduced me to you when, Michael's gone now, so I'm doing Michael's task. And just a few times in conversations with her, I can't tell you how much I've learned. She and the RCIA team are there at your disposal. And I know with a busy year for me, I can use them, so you'll be hearing from me. But in this short period of time, I have to admit that Terry certainly did share a good deal with you, and that material in there is great. So we thank you very much.
Yeah. One more plug. If you noticed in your packets, I stapled in the Archdiocesan Forum for Catechumenate. I'm actually the chair of that group. And we have a blog. If you haven't found it yet, go find it, sign up for it, and we post all kinds of articles. It's beautifully cataloged, where if you want to find out something about sponsors, you'll find an article about that. It's got resources, it's got all kinds of stuff. So it's a good resource for you. And we'd love to have you come to any meetings.
Long time coming.
Yes.
Before you do